The original canon story of Resident Evil in all of its cheesy glory.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Now, canon in Resident Evil is a canon of worms. What I'm going to consider the original story of Resident Evil are the plots of the following games: Resident Evil 1996, Resident Evil 2 1998, Resident Evil 3 1999, and Resident Evil Code Veronica 2000. So in July of 1998, homicides begin to pop up in the midwestern town of Raccoon City, committed by a group of suspected cannibals. Believing that the hideout of these killers is in the woods, the Raccoon City Police Department sent STAR's Bravo team to investigate. Barry Burton, Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Joseph Frost, along with their pilot, Brad Vickers, and Alpha Team Captain Albert Wesker are flying over the forest looking for signs of Bravo Team's helicopter. Jill spots a plume of smoke, prompting the team to land and investigate. They find the wreckage of Bravo Team's helicopter with no one left inside. While searching the nearby area for clues, Joseph picks up a free pistol but realizes a severed human hand is included. Some Jurassic Park-sounding Dobermans pounce on Joseph and maul him to death. The team then dash for the helicopter, but unfortunately for STAR's Alpha Team, Brad is also a member of STAR's Alpha Team. He flees in the helicopter, forcing the team to flee for a mansion visible in the distance. The story varies slightly depending on whether or not you choose to play Chris or Jill. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to be telling the story from Jill's perspective because, well, the poor girl needs some love. I mean, God knows Capcom hasn't been giving her any. Barry, Jill, and Albert, no, that's weird, Wesker make it into the mansion. Jill realizes that somehow Chris went missing during their frenzied sprint towards the mansion, but Wesker prevents her from going back outside to look for him because, well, yeah, demon dogs and all. A gunshot from another room interrupts their conversation. Wesker sends Jill and Barry to investigate while he handles the main hall. I don't know why he needs to handle the main hall either. There's like 6 handles on the main floor alone. The pair find a pool of blood in the dining room, and Barry splits to look at bloodstain, I guess? While Jill enters a narrow hallway nearby, where she stumbles upon a man in desperate need for some moisturizer. Jill does the rational thing after witnessing a man cannibalizing the decapitated body of her teammate, and cheeses it back to the man who carries a magnum. And it takes 3, count them, 3 magnum rounds to kill that zombie. What was that guy on before he turned? Jeez. The two try to report to Wesker, but he's pulled a Chris and gone missing. Barry suggests that they split up because that's a great idea after encountering a cannibalistic bullet sponge.
Okay, I'll try the door on the opposite side.
This mansion is gigantic. We could get into trouble if we get lost. We should start from the first floor, okay? And Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
Jill explores the mansion and discovers that multiple members of Bravo Team have been killed. Kenneth was killed by dry-skinned Sponge Man, Richard was bitten by a huge mutant snake and dies either from the venom or from bleeding to death, depending on player actions, and Forrest, who escaped to a terrace on the 2nd floor, was, according to the game, pecked to death by crows, which is my favorite sequence in the original. What a weird thing to say. During Chris's story, he meets and rescues Rebecca Chambers, the last member of Bravo Team, aside from their captain who is still unaccounted for. Spread throughout the mansion, Jill finds documents that help explain what happened. The incident started back in May and involved an accident in the basement lab, which released a virus that was being studied. Employees and researchers try to defend themselves with protective suits, but too many people have already been infected, and the survivors get totally wiped out. She finds a top-secret document that was just left on a table for some reason. Dude, burn it, tear it up, crumple it, and put it in the trash? The document reveals that stars were specifically lured to the mansion to provide live combat data. Jill finds her way outside and passes through an enclosed courtyard to the dormitory, where she discovers that researchers were experimenting on many different life forms before the outbreak. including sharks, God knows why, and plants. One unspecified type of plant, codenamed Plant 42, took very well to the experiments. After being exposed to the T-virus, the plant grew to an enormous size. The dormitory is infested with the plant and its many vines. Jill and Barry defeat Plant 42 and split up again. Barry remains in the dormitory to continue looking around and tells Jill she should go back to the mansion and continue the investigation there. While Jill is heading back to the mansion, she encounters none other than Wesker. He explains that he left the main hall and disappeared because of an encounter with a zombie, and basically just reiterates what Barry said. Jill, go back to the mansion, keep looking around, lock doors, yada yada. Jill gets a battery for the mansion. Yes, that is the key item that is preventing progression in the story. With it, she is able to play musical lifts and then enters the caves, where she finds Enrico, Bravo Team's captain. He claims there's a mole within stars, but before he can reveal who he thinks it is, he's killed. Barry stays behind to look at Enrico's body, I guess. I don't know why. I mean, we know what happened. Somebody snuck in behind you both and capped him. Jill encounters yet another questionable experiment, giant spiders. Who approved giant spiders? Elsewhere in the caves, Jill finds an elevator that takes her back above ground, where she finds a large fountain, which, when drained, reveals another lift that takes her to the underground lab where the outbreak began. Inside of a high-security prison cell, Jill finds Chris, but she isn't able to open the door yet. A document in the lab mentioned a heliport, so Jill heads off to find a way to get to the heliport while keeping an eye out for a key to Chris's cell. Barry rejoins Jill after spending way too much time looking at a dead body, as she takes an elevator to yet another level of the lab, where they find Wesker. Barry holds Jill at magnum point, while Wesker gives his evil villain speech. He reveals that the company behind the creation of the virus is Umbrella, and that he works for them. He then sends Barry away and explains his motives. While he is, yes, working for Umbrella, and he does intend to destroy the mansion and the lab to cover Umbrella's tracks, he has his own goal of utilizing Tyrant, the, quote, most powerful biological weapon. Barry magnum whips Wesker and apologizes to Jill, and says that they should probably see if they can destroy Tyrant, because, you know, if it were to get out, it would look kind of bad for stars. Inside of the room that Wesker was guarding is a lab with test tubes, and in one of the tubes is Tyrant suspended in liquid. It has an exposed heart, which I'm not entirely sure is a great indicator of the most powerful biological weapon, and one of its arms has a huge claw in place of a hand. Barry really whacks it up and drains the Tyrant's test tube. I don't know, maybe he thought if you drained it, it would die because it can't live without the liquid? Tyrant breaks the tube and Barry whacks it up again and doesn't even point his gun at it before he gets clawed. After defeating Tyrant, Jill and Barry realize that Wesker, left unbound and unattended, has done like he did in the beginning and gone poof. An announcer warns that the self-destruct sequence has been activated. I wonder who did that. And that all of the doors have been unlocked, including the prison cell. However, this would not have opened the 3-stage security system before the prison door itself, which is very, very cruel. Imagine hearing the announcement that the lab is going to self-destruct. You hear the click of your cell unlocking, so you cautiously exit. The announcer says everyone should evacuate, so you hurry to the end of the hall and nothing. Even though the announcer is saying that all of the doors are open, this one is still locked. You're stuck listening as it repeats that you need to evacuate, that you only have 5 minutes left, and then the group head for the heliport, taking down Tyrant one last time.
It's coming! Jill! Kill that monster! You're our Amazon, Jill!
Barry, Chris, Jill, and Rebecca all escape an Alpha Team's helicopter with Brad. The mansion explodes, destroying critical evidence and all of the remaining BOW.
Resident
In Resident Evil 2, you pick between Leon and Claire. Whoever you pick first is the A scenario, and after completing it, you can load that save file and play through as the other character in their B scenario. Based on what I could find, Claire A and Leon B is the pairing considered most canon. So we're following Claire and checking in on Leon as we go. Claire Redfield rides into town on her motorcycle, stopping at a diner. Inside, she sees nobody around, but she does hear something, so she peeks around the counter and finds a man cannibalizing another man behind the counter. Understandably upset, Claire rushes for the emergency exit. Meanwhile, Leon Kennedy pulls over to investigate a dead body in the middle of the road. Zombies begin to surround him, and he backs into an alley. A door at his side bursts open, and he sees Claire trying to escape from a zombie. He orders her to duck, kills a zombie, and asks her to come with him to the police station where it will be safer. They steal a police car, and Leon admits that this is his glorious first day on the job. Claire says she came to town looking for her brother, Chris Redfield. A zombie pops up from the back, causing Leon to lose control of the car and crash into a pole. As the duo are recovering from the shock, they realize that a big rig is racing towards them. They dive out of the car, safe but separated. Leon calls for Claire to meet him at the police station. So Claire hurries down the zombie-infested streets and enters a building with the big sign, Gun Shop Kendo. The man behind the counter points a crossbow at her, but he quickly realizes she isn't a zombie.
Ooh, sorry about that, babe. I thought you were one of them.
What's going on in this town?
Hold on. I ain't got no clue, darling. By the time I noticed something was wrong, the entire city was infested with zombies. But don't you worry, girlie. You'll be safe in here. I'm keeping a close eye on things.
This guy has always freaked me out. I don't think he's supposed to be creepy, but the voice direction for him is super weird. Also, what do you mean you've been keeping a close eye on things? You let Claire walk into the unlocked front door of your shop. Well, would you look at that? He also let a bunch of zombies walk up to the full-length windows without a peep. Also, are these like the weakest windows ever? There wasn't any banging on the glass or anything. They just walked into it and it broke? Anyway, Claire finds her way to the Star's office on the second floor of the police station, where she finds Chris's diary on his desk. And like a good, proper sister, she reads that with no hesitation. On August 24th, Chris writes that with the help of Jill and Barry, he's learned that Umbrella has started research on the G virus, a variation of the T virus. The three talked it over and have decided they're going to fly to Umbrella's HQ in Europe. And Chris admits that he didn't tell Claire, since he was worried that by telling her, he would put her in danger. Which explains why Claire is really concerned. Her brother just up and vanished. Probably should have thought that one through a little farther, Chrissy. As Claire's headed out of the Star's office, the fax machine spits out a 2-page report titled Federal Police Department's Internal Investigation Report, and it's addressed to Chris. The report dishes some dirt on the Chief of Police, Brian Irons. He was previously arrested under suspicion of sexual assault back in his college days, that he has received bribes from Umbrella over the past few years, and that he was involved in the cover-up of the mansion incident directly. After reading the facts, Claire leaves the office and a scream from down the hall alerts her, and she sees a little girl being pursued by a zombie. She screams for help again and then disappears down the hallway. Claire chases after the little girl and bumps into Leon, who confirms that he also saw her and that she just missed her. So Claire says they should split up again, and Leon's focus should be on finding them a way to escape, while Claire will focus on finding the girl. After clearing some debris in the police station, Claire enters a decorated office. A woman's body lies on the desk, blood staining her white dress. A man spins his office chair around and aims a pistol at Claire, but relaxes when he realizes that she isn't a zombie who figured out how to work a doorknob. He confirms that he's Brian Irons, chief of police. Claire asks about the body.
That's the mayor's daughter. I was told to look after her, but I failed miserably. Just look at her. She was a true beauty. her skin nothing short of perfection.
Even without the facts telling us that Brian is a total creep, his behavior is a dead giveaway. The way he describes the poor girl? Ugh. Dismissed by Brian, Claire wanders into a side room and finds the little girl. The girl introduces herself as Sherry, the daughter of employees from the chemical plant on the outskirts of the city, and she says that there's some sort of monster looking for her. An inhuman yell interrupts them, and Sherry runs away again. Claire chases after Sherry and enters Brian's office again, where she realizes that Brian is no longer around. He left his diary behind, and we already know that snooping through people's diaries is kinda Claire's thing, so she reads it. The diary confirms that Brian is working with Umbrella. His entry on September 24th tells us that the reason the RPD response to the, zombie apocalypse has been god-awful is because he intentionally spread confusion among the police. He wants to make sure as few people as possible escape from, quote, his city. He even cut off secret escape routes within the precinct itself. And then he plunges straight off the deep end and says he's going to personally hunt and kill the survivors, confirming at least one kill of his in orgasmic detail and calling his next target the mayor's daughter. Maybe we should go find Sherry. After an interlude, Claire reunites with Sherry in Iron's office, and thank God he's not around. Solving a puzzle hidden by a painting behind Iron's desk, Claire finds an elevator that takes her to a secret tunnel. She hears a man yelling, and we cut away to see Brian being attacked by a creature with a large eye in one arm. It forces some sort of worm down Brian's throat. By the time Claire makes it to the room, Brian is conscious again. He reveals that a new strain of virus, the G virus, is being developed by William Birkin, Sherry's father. He threatens to kill Claire, but is rudely interrupted by his kid.
I'm going to take you with me. I just can't take the pain.
Brian's chest baby escaped down the ladder, and Claire follows it into an underground chamber and watches as it grows exponentially before her very eyes. Boy, kids sure do grow fast these days. After defeating Brian's chest baby, Claire returns to Brian's office to fetch Sherry and radios Leon that she has found a way into the sewers.
It'll be all right, trust me. We found a way to the sewer. Follow us later.
Cool. Are we not going to tell Leon how to get there?
Claire, wait!
No? Alright, so flashing sideways to Leon, who we last encountered while chasing down Sherry, we find him exploring the parking garage, where he encounters another survivor, a woman who shoots at him with a pistol before realizing, whoops, not all people in RPD uniforms are in fact zombies.
Who are you?
Ada Wong.
And what are you doing here?
I'm looking for some guy named Ben. He's one of those reporter types, always looking for a scoop. I heard he was locked up in the cell block, only there's a wrecked car barring the entrance. I've been trying to find another way inside.
Leon helps her push a car out of the way, and they find Ben snoozing away in one of the holding cells. This scene doesn't give us a whole lot to go off of, except that Ada is a little suspicious. Ben told Raccoon City officials that he knew something about what was going on, and she wants to know specifically what he told them. Ben shrugs her off and asks who she is. She says that she's looking for her boyfriend, John. We've actually seen John. Kind of. Back in Resident Evil 1, one of the documents that you need to progress through the lab at the end of the game is written by a John, who mentions having a girlfriend named Ada. The only memorable thing about John is that even though he's a scientist, he is dumb as rocks. His username and password for his computer in the secret hidden lab is his name, John, and his girlfriend's 3-letter name. Ben proceeds to answer none of their questions, but he does tell Leon and Ada that they can gain access to the sewers by going into the back of the kennels. And by going through the sewers, they can escape the city.
Does anyone know where they put the key to this cell?
I have it right here, officer. But I'm not about to leave this cell.
And I don't know what Ben's plan is here. He's just going to stay in a cell with no food? If zombies find their way into the holding area, aren't they just going to endlessly bang on the cell, groaning and growling and stinking up the place? Back to Claire. Unfortunately, to get to the sewers, Sherry is going to have to pass through the, torture room. Hey, Sherry, cover your eyes. I'm not getting blamed for any more childhood trauma, okay? As Claire and Sherry head into the sewers, they notice some creature walking along a path above them, heading in the same direction as they are. And for whatever reason, Claire yells they should run in the same direction as the monster. After the monster went that direction, having clearly not seen them. It also has, no impact on the scene that follows it whatsoever. Claire and Sherry go through the door, and Sherry is then sucked through a small vent into a lower part of the sewers. Are we supposed to believe that the monster man who was walking, not running, got into a control room and opened the gate to whisk Sherry away from Claire? No, if the monster saw them, he'd just attack. Sherry tries to find a way back to Claire, but she falls into an even lower part of the sewer and passes out. Our camera lingers and shows us a humanoid creature shambling towards Sherry's unconscious body. The screen fades to black and some gnarly sounds begin to play. Claire encounters Annette, Sherry's mother, who thinks that Claire is a spy from Umbrella looking to steal the G-Virus. Claire says, "No, stupid, I'm hunting down Sherry, who's now lost in the sewers somewhere by herself." Annette says that, well, then Sherry's in a lot more trouble than being alone in the sewers, because Sherry's father, William, is the monster we've been seeing glimpses of, and he's hunting Sherry down specifically because every G-Virus creature has the ability to implant embryos, and the success rate of this is all but guaranteed when the recipient is a relative. Like his daughter. Ew. Well, at least he doesn't remember that part? But still, ew. So the outbreak within Raccoon City itself has nothing to do with the mansion incident. William was obsessed with the G-Virus and didn't want to cough it up. So Umbrella sent operatives to retrieve the virus, and they shoot William in the process. William injects himself with the G-Virus, mutates, and then hunts down and kills all the operatives, munching on some G-Virus vials along the way. But he's a sloppy eater, and he leaves a little mess behind. And this is how you get ants. But we're in the sewer. So the ants of the sewers, aka rats, have a little munch of their own. The rats then spread the virus, Black Plague style, to the whole city. After hearing Sherry scream, Annette and Claire split up to look for her. Flash sideways to Leon, where they are now in the sewers. Ada notices Annette down the hall and chases after her. Annette fires at Ada, and Leon tackles her out of the way, but is shot in the process and passes out. Ada chases after Annette, but gets held at gunpoint.
Identify yourself. Ada Wong. Ada Wong. I've heard that name before. Now I remember. One of the men from Chicago who came to assist the T-Virus research used his girlfriend's name as his password. Ada and John, I believe.
Why does Annette know that? Did John brag about it? Yeah, my girlfriend's super cool and she's so hot. Her name's my password. Annette notices that Ada is wearing Sherry's locket, which she picked up one of the multiple times she split off from Leon in a not very important segment earlier in the game. All that matters is that she bumps into Sherry, who cheeses it, but somehow in the process of running away, her necklace flies off of her neck and Ada picks it up. And, of course, Annette is just a little bit upset about her having her daughter's precious memento. Ada tries to wrestle the gun away from Annette, who ends up falling over the railing and plummeting into a deeper level of the sewer. For whatever reason, Ada decides to look in the locket and finds that there's a secret compartment inside of it containing a vial of the G virus. And we're flashing sideways to Claire, who is in the process of defeating a huge sewer gator, who is likely also infected, but I don't know, other than being a big boy, he seems pretty normal. Claire then finds Sherry passed out on a trash pile and wakes her up. A larva slithers away from Sherry as she comes to. Reunited, the pair escape the sewers and use a sky tram to access another facility. As Claire and Sherry descend into a deeper level of the complex with a giant lift, Sherry passes out, and to make matters worse, something is banging on the exterior of the lift cabin. And it turns out to be William searching for Sherry. Which, why? He already did the larvae thing? Claire carries Sherry into a security office, wraps the girl in her red denim vest, and the two share a cute little moment. So Claire restores power to the lab and looks for some way to cure Sherry. As she's exploring the lower levels of the lab, she runs into Annette again, who accuses Claire of having killed William and then awkwardly brings up how she collected a sample of the G virus. Claire's like, yeah, who cares? Your daughter? Embryos? Bad? William, even more mutated than before, drops from the roof. Even though Annette already told Claire that William would have no memories whatsoever of his previous life, she gives him the doe eyes and is just so happy to see him. William then adds domestic abuse to his list of crimes, and before Annette passes away, she gives Claire a document with all the necessary information on how to create the vaccine. Flashing sideways to Leon, who has regained consciousness and caught up with Ada. She patches up his bullet wound with some gauze that she has in her dress pockets, and then mumbles something about how her boyfriend is dead, a fact that she learned from her conversation with Annette. But when Leon's like, sorry, what? I couldn't hear you, you're mumbling, she just refuses to answer, and the two leave the sewers together. And this part's a little wonky because they take the same lift as Claire and Sherry and are also attacked by William? Ada is badly wounded when William punches through the wall and strikes her. He promises to find something to bandage up Ada, but Ada tells him, no, escape without me, I'll only slow you down. And Leon's like, no, I'm supposed to help civilians? Because Leon still thinks she's a civilian for whatever reason. Ada then awkwardly flirts with Leon, like less than an hour after learning about her boyfriend's death.
I know I've only known you for a short period of time, but I really enjoy being with you.
What's a red flag? And then she's randomly just like, I know I'm not capable of caring about anyone. Girl, what are you talking about? From Leon's perspective, you've been absolutely nutty over your boyfriend this entire time, running off at every opportunity to try and find him. Leon again promises he'll be right back. He squeezes through a vent and hears the lift descend without him. Probably nothing to worry about. This is also weird because Leon bumps into Annette, accuses him of murdering William just like she does to Claire. And I mean, I guess there's no reason why Annette couldn't have encountered Leon first and then Claire. The scenes are just so similar, but it is really funny to me to think she's like, you killed my husband. Wait, no, it was you. Annette says that Ada is an operative sent by Umbrella specifically to retrieve a sample of the G virus. She did a background check on Ada and theorizes that Ada only got close to John so she could milk him for information. Despite only knowing Ada for, a few hours maybe, he gives her, I know her, she'd never do that trope. So something I didn't cover because I didn't want to segue to Leon for like 30 seconds and then snap back to Claire was that when Leon got to the police station the first time, a cutscene will play of a helicopter flying over the police station. It's carrying a bunch of these like red cylinders and it deploys one which opens as it falls and reveals a humanoid creature in a trench coat. And from that point on, Leon has a reoccurring boss in the form of his own personal tyrant. Back to the present, Leon is being backed into a corner by said reoccurring personal tyrant. Ada then appears, shoots the pursuer, wounding it and causing it to fall off the catwalk, but is herself injured in the process. And I hate to recycle the word awkward, but I have no other words for this scene. Ada tells Leon that he should just save himself, and Leon, of course, refuses. Then she just awkwardly says, "I am just a woman who fell in love with you." I don't think you're off the hook here, Leon. She's a walking red flag. She only found out her boyfriend is dead like less than an hour ago, only met you within this day, and has only been physically in the same space as you for maybe like a total of 20 minutes. A PA system announces that the self-destruct sequence has begun and that all employees should proceed to the emergency car at the bottom platform. Flashing back to Claire, who is inside of a lower security room, she notices Leon on the cameras and thinks, "Oh yeah, him." She radios him to ask that he go get Sherry from the upper security office while she creates the vaccine.
Wait a second. What are you gonna do? Where are you going?
Vaccine in hand, Claire calls for an elevator to get to the bottom platform that the announcer's been going on and on about, and old Willie Burks returns for another showdown. This is for backhanding your wife, William. Meanwhile, Leon has gotten Sherry loaded onto the train and is getting it prepared when his pursuer makes yet another appearance. After fighting him for a while, a shadowy figure sounding exactly like Ada appears and hucks a rocket launcher for him to use. Normal civilian.
Game over.
Claire makes it onto the train car in the nick of time. She gives Sherry the vaccine and she wakes up. Leon says, "Whew, it's over." But Claire insists, "No, I still have to find Chris."
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil takes place 66 days after the mansion incident, with one half of it taking place a day before the entirety of Resident Evil 2. In an opening voiceover, Jill explains that since Raccoon City is controlled by Umbrella, no one was willing to listen to them when they blew the whistle on Umbrella and implicated them in the mansion incident. Jill is still inside of Raccoon City as the zombie outbreak reaches a fever pitch. The police are outnumbered and decimated. Squads of men, wearing Umbrella's logo, are also deployed, but most of them are killed as well. Jill escapes from her apartment building as zombies swarm all around her. As she weaves her way through the infested streets, Jill encounters a man who turns out to be none other than Brad, Alpha Team's helicopter pilot, also known as the guy who ditched her back in Resident Evil 1. Brad references some he that he refuses to give any additional details on, except that whoever they are, they're after STARS members. He gives a repeat performance and ditches Jill, but this time he has no excuse. Where are you going, dude? Stick with the lady who survived the mansion. As Jill approaches the police station, Brad catches up to her.
Jill!
Brad!
We've gotta... Jill! Help!
No!
Resident Evil 3 has this neat feature which gives you two choices and a limited time to pick one. Generally, one option has you fight and the other has you avoid combat, but not always. Which option you choose does affect how the game plays out, but the overarching plot remains the same. After witnessing her comrade get a tentacle through his face, courtesy of a guy who got a sweet deal on a black trench coat at the local Big and Tall, Jill decides to escape into the police station. The last time she fought something like that, Jill needed a rocket launcher. From Brad, who is too busy being dead to supply her with one. As Jill tries to find a way to escape the city, she runs into a man named Carlos, who introduces himself as a mercenary in the employ of Umbrella. As with many aspects of Resident Evil 3, where you actually meet Carlos in the game can be in a different location, but the scenario always ends with Jill and Carlos evading Jill's stalker together, and Carlos saying that Jill should cooperate with him and his squad, after which he leaves. Jill finds a cable car and plans to use it to escape the city, but discovers she isn't the only one who had that idea. Another merc with short white hair, known as Nikolai, is in the cable car along with a wounded merc known as Mikhail. Nikolai is a little wary of Jill, and she explains she survived so far because she's a member of STARS, which causes Nikolai to leave with no explanation.
They're coming. Get ready. Fire.
Mikhail is delirious with pain, though, so Jill decides to follow Nikolai into the cab of the cable car, where she also finds Carlos. Carlos says that their small group appear to be the only survivors left, and he asks her to join them again. Nikolai is hesitant, but Carlos points out, with Mikhail wounded, that the team is down to only himself and Nikolai. So Nikolai agrees to cooperate with Jill and explains that they're going to use the cable car to get to St. Michael's clock tower, the extraction point. The cable car is inoperable though, so to get it up and running, the team will have to find replacement power cables, oil, and a new fuse. Jill heads to a gas station to fetch oil, and Nikolai appears soon after. He offers to search the attached garage, while Jill completes an annoying puzzle to get some machine oil. From the garage, Nikolai screams as sparks from a loose wire ignite the puddle of oil on the garage floor, causing an explosion. Jill runs out of the station and is just able to get far enough away before the building explodes. Jill heads to an Umbrella-owned office where she witnesses another merc known as Murphy begging for Carlos to kill him before he succumbs to the virus.
Wait, we don't have to do this. Please hurry. Before I lose conscious. Before too late. Kill me! Yeah!
Before Jill can get a word in, Carlos rushes past her and leaves. She gathers oil additive from the chemical storage in the back of the office and returns to the cable car. Mikhail is outside of the cable car gunning down a group of zombies. Like Carlos, Mikhail says that the mercs aren't really involved with Umbrella and shouldn't be held accountable for Umbrella's actions. Jill helps him back inside and repairs the cable car. Carlos enters and Jill comforts him about Murphy, then says that Nikolai won't be joining them either. Carlos starts the cable car, but soon a loud crashing noise and Mikhail screaming distracts them. Jill hurries to check on Mikhail and finds that her pursuer has broken into the cable car. Jill fights back, but soon Mikhail tells her to leave. He takes a hand grenade from his vest, pulls the pin, and sacrifices himself to stop the pursuer.
No, the brakes are out!
This must be.
Jill activates the emergency brake, preventing a fatal collision with the clock tower. Carlos is nowhere to be seen, but the two soon reunite within the clock tower itself. He's having a bit of a hard day, though, doubting that the extraction plan will actually work, so Jill smacks some sense into him. Overwhelmed by the loss of his entire team, Carlos runs off. Jill climbs to the top of the clock tower and rings the bell to signal the extraction helicopter. She hurries to the courtyard, waving to the pilot, but her pursuer feels a little excluded. He's too big to fit into a helicopter. And can I just say that the idea that not only was the pursuer not really hurt at all by that hand grenade that blew up at like point blank range, but afterwards he was like, huh, and he circled back and he got his rocket launcher. And that is just so funny to me. The pursuer does what he probably should have done this entire time and attacks Jill with his tentacle, piercing her shoulder. Carlos arrives to help her fight him off and is injured when one of the rockets narrowly misses him. He continues to fire as the pursuer aims yet another rocket at him. A bullet hits the rocket while it's still within the launcher, causing it to explode and wounding the pursuer. Carlos passes out and Jill finishes the fight. The pursuer tries to escape, but ends up collapsing in fires from the crashed cable car. And Jill doesn't want to be left out of the slumber party, so she decides to take a little nap. Carlos carries Jill to the Clockwork Chapel, where she remains unconscious until October 1st. After waking up, Jill is quick to realize that her pursuer has infected her. Carlos promises to help and hurries to the hospital where he encounters Nikolai. He's got another merc, bloodied and collapsed on the ground, held at gunpoint. He tells Carlos that he's one of the supervisors and that that's all Carlos needs to know before pointing a pistol at him. The wounded merc pulls a Mikhail and arms a hand grenade. Carlos is able to dive out of the way in time, while Nikolai leaps through a nearby window. In the basement of the hospital, Carlos is able to synthesize a vaccine which he administers to Jill.
No way! That monster just doesn't give up!
What? I thought we killed that thing!
No, it's been waiting for you!
He's playing with us. Carlos, do you think that it's unstoppable?
No, I don't think so. I'm sorry, Jill, but I've got to go take care of a few things. Oh, and bad news. Nikolai is still alive.
Nikolai? Are you sure?
Yes. I don't know how, but I do know that he is our enemy. Remember, don't trust him.
Jill finds a cabin in the back of a graveyard that's within Raccoon City's park. And inside of the cabin, behind the fireplace, she finds a hidden room that was being used by Umbrella's undercover supervisors within the Mercs. She overhears a message to the supervisors telling them that the mission has been aborted. She bumps into Nikolai, who explains that Umbrella sent the Mercs to the infested city not to save civilians, but to gather combat data. That old stick again. A quake interrupts them, and Nikolai takes the opportunity to flee. Jill finds her way to an abandoned factory, formerly operated by Umbrella, where she meets up with Carlos again. Carlos tells Jill that the city is going to be nuked come daybreak, so he suggests that they split up and look for an escape.
Warning. Missile attack confirmed. All personnel evacuate immediately.
I guess the people who built this place had an idea that Raccoon City might get nuked even back then. Jill goes to the radio room, but before she can do much of anything, Nikolai appears flying a helicopter and opens fire. Jill can try to negotiate with him, or she can return fire, but either way, the result is that the helicopter is no longer an option for their escape. A message comes over the radio, garbled, but one word does come through clearly.
Please come in, Jill.
With a little help from a rail cannon, Jill is finally able to defeat her pursuer once and for all.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Carlos catches up with Jill and brings her attention to the sounds of a helicopter in the distance, and I love his little yay that he does as he's running towards the helicopter. The game is coy about it for some reason, I don't know why, but Jill's mysterious savior is none other than Barry himself from Resident Evil 1.
Resident Evil.
Claire Redfield is taken by an Umbrella-marked helicopter to a prison island. A voiceover reveals that Claire was caught snooping around Umbrella's Paris lab in her continuing search for Chris. She wakes up to the island quaking and the sounds of explosions outside. A man, holding his abdomen and breathing heavily, comes into the room and unlocks Claire's cell. He tells Claire that she's free to leave the complex because the island has been taken over and the occupying soldiers have been wiped out. Claire leaves the prison block and discovers that there are zombies on this island as well. As she's passing through a courtyard, she's shot at by a red-haired boy.
Make one wrong move and I'll shoot.
Relax, beautiful. I said I was sorry. My name's Steve. I was a prisoner on this island.
He reveals there's an airport somewhere which he plans to use for his escape. But when Claire tries to go with him, he says that she'll only slow him down and he runs off. His loss, Claire survived the first outbreak with a little girl in tow. The pair meet again when Claire finds Steve researching on a computer. He says that Umbrella has put Chris under surveillance, prompting Claire to message Leon asking him to inform Chris that he's being monitored. Which, is it just me, or is that not kind of a big plot hole? I mean, Claire only got into this mess because she was trying to find Chris, but Leon has Chris's email? Why didn't Leon just tell Chris that Claire was doing risky
Quack.
trying to find him? Chris, send your sister a nice email. Dang. Steve mockingly suggests that Claire should provide the coordinates of the island to her brother and ask him to come and help out, which she does. Steve insists that there's no way that Chris is going to come and help, and she's just going to get disappointed if she puts her trust in other people, and then he storms out.
What was that all about?
A man shoots at Claire with a rifle and introduces himself as Alfred Ashford, commander of the prison base. How many guys is Claire gonna meet who shoot at her first? Well, unfortunately, Alfred isn't as nice as Steve. He thinks Claire intentionally let herself get caught so that she could lead people to his base. He eventually leaves, promising to toy with Claire before killing her. Claire's next encounter with Alfred takes place after she is trapped in another part of the facility. Alfred taunts Claire over an intercom, saying that he's prepared for her a special little playground. She is then ambushed by a strange new BOW known as a Bandersnatch. It grabs her by the head and attempts to crush her skull, but Steve busts through a window and kills it. Alfred activates an elevator, taking the two underground. As they're exploring, Claire ends up crushed beneath some debris. A zombie starts shambling towards them, but Steve, who up until this point has been pretty much bloodthirsty, is, for whatever reason, hesitating. The zombie decides, well, why go after the guy who's standing there, even if he is like a deer in the headlights, and turns his attention on Claire, trapped beneath the rubble. The zombie gets dangerously close to Claire, and Steve finally unloads his SMG into it, yelling, "Father!" Steve finally opens up about why he's here. His father, pre-zombification, was an Umbrella employee who was stealing information from the company with the intent of selling it. He was caught, resulting in the death of Steve's mother and the two of them being sent to the island. Claire leaves him to mourn the death of his father and is ambushed by Wesker. He reveals that he's the one who attacked the island in the first place, drops a little bit of venom Chris's way, and after tossing Claire around like a rag doll, he receives a message on his earpiece and leaves. Claire finds an abandoned mansion elsewhere on the island and is ambushed by Alexia Ashford, Alfred's sister. Steve barges in and somehow manages to only hit Alexia with one bullet out of his machine gun, which causes Alexia to flee through a hidden door. Through the hidden door is yet another bedroom. Alfred leaps from the canopied bed and tries to strike Steve with his rifle, but is quickly overpowered. Alfred notices his reflection and sees that he's wearing Alexia's makeup, which causes him to panic and run from the room. Claire realizes, oh, Alexia never existed after all. Alfred just thinks that she does and has been pretending to be her. And it wouldn't be a Resident Evil game without it.
The self-destruct system has been
That freak! He's trying to blow us up along with the entire facility.
Steve and Claire escape in a plane while Alfred escapes in a jet. Their plane is hijacked by Alfred and forced to fly to an Umbrella-owned facility in Antarctica. Their plane crashed, so to escape the base, they use a drill vehicle thing to break through the wall, but not before getting into a battle with Alfred and wounding him. We cut away to see Alfred draining a test tube, freeing the real Alexia before he dies from the wounds inflicted on him by Steve and Claire. Editor me here, I just wanted to jump in and say I gave way more credit to this scene than it deserves. It turns out he just happens to die in front of her tube as it opens. He didn't do anything. A huge tentacle erupts from the earth and strikes the vehicle that Claire and Steve are escaping in. We cut to Rockford Island, where we see Chris infiltrating the base through a seaside cave, and he encounters Rodrigo, the man who let Claire out of her cell in the beginning of the game. He informs Chris that while, of course, he can't be certain, he does believe that Claire was on one of the many planes that left the island not long ago. Chris then runs into Wesker, who freely offers up that he came to the island to retrieve Alexia at the request of some unspecified organization. The two fight, and by that I mean Chris gets abused, and Wesker just kind of, again, freely offers up that he knows that Claire is in Antarctica with Alexia. And he says this even though he says he's also going to kill Chris. Alexia pops up on a monitor nearby, which causes Wesker to hurl Chris across the room and vanish.
Alexia?
Chris makes his way to the Antarctic base, where he finds his sister gooped up in a cocoon. But Steve is nowhere in sight, and Claire doesn't want to leave without him. The giant tentacle that attacked Claire and Steve separates the siblings, and they hear Steve screaming. Chris, who is lightly wounded and on the bottom of the stairs, separated from Claire, tells Claire that she should go and rescue Steve. Claire finds him restrained in a chair. She presses a button nearby to release the chair restraints, but a huge two-handed axe is still pinning him across the chest with its haft. He says that Alexia told him that she was going to experiment on him. Steve begins to mutate into a large, scaly green monster that kind of reminds me of a hunter, but is like 10 times less intimidating because he still has like his regular face and his doofy hair. He pulls the giant axe from the wall and attacks Claire with it. She rushes to the end of the hall in time to dodge underneath a metal gate. Steve wails on the gate with his axe, and Claire has no real choice but to sit there and watch him because the exit to the room also locked. A tentacle then busts through the wall and begins to crush Claire. Steve breaks through the gate and manages to regain enough control to save Claire, chopping the tentacle in two. As it recoils, it strikes him, knocking him into a wall. Steve reverts back to his normal self.
I'm glad that I met you. I love you, Claire.
Steve?
Yes, a single whack of that tentacle was in fact enough to one-shot him. Meanwhile, Chris is watching as Wesker tries to capture Alexia, the last source of the T. Veronica virus, a variant of the T virus that she created before intentionally injecting herself with it and then entering cryostasis. She attacks Wesker with her blood, which bursts into flames. When Wesker realizes that Chris is watching, he, for whatever reason, decides, I'm gonna attack him rather than Flamey Blood Lady, but gives up when Alexia refuses to just stand on the sideline waiting for her turn. How rude.
Chris, since you're one of my best men, I'll let you handle this.
Chris finds Claire still locked in the room and realizes that Steve has died. In tears, Claire passes a file under the door and suggests Chris try activating the self-destruct sequence to open the electronic lock. That's right, 2 self-destruct sequences in one game. It's the most Resident Evil-y game in the franchise. After freeing Claire, Chris sends her off to the emergency elevator while he defeats Alexia. He finds Claire being held hostage by Wesker. This scene is a little wonky because he implies that Alexia's work wasn't that impressive after all, which is possibly a jab because, it couldn't be that important, Chris defeated it. But when Chris says that Alexia is dead, Wesker's like, I got Steve's body, and Steve has a little bit of T. Alexia in him, which isn't a thing. I'm guessing that was a whoopsie and they meant the T. Veronica, but then why dog on Alexia's work then? He needs it for whoever hired him anyway. After being severely burned by falling debris from the, self-destructing building, Wesker flees with the promise that he'll get Chris next time. Chris and Claire escape in a jet, and Claire tries to wrangle a promise out of Chris that he won't abandon her again, but Chris is like, yeah, I was kind of in the middle of attacking Umbrella when I diverted to come back here, so, now we gotta go destroy Umbrella. Okay, so that's 4 games, and I have no way to package my thoughts on them into anything succinct. But Resident Evil 3 is still my favorite out of them. Resident Evil Veronica is too long. Resident Evil 1 would probably be my favorite game of them all if it had some of the quality of life features gameplay-wise that some of the later editions had, such as like the quick turn and the lock-on aim. And Resident Evil 2, I've always been kind of like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's arguably just a better Resident Evil 1. It plays better, it's got some quality of life improvements, the voice acting is significantly better, but I think it's all down to the A scenario, B scenario thing. It makes it, like, yeah, there's more replayability, but it just feels needlessly long, because when you play the B scenario, you do a lot of the same things over again. And I don't know, maybe it also comes down to this being the game where Ada comes from, where, like, if she had just not continued to be a character, I think Resident Evil would be better for it. That's just my hot take. This was a little bit different from what I normally do, but if you like this sort of thing, consider subscribing, and if you're up for some more 90s era horror, check out this video about Amber: Journeys Beyond. See you there!